live in Washington, in Congress, represents the shore of North Carolina, the Outer Banks, all the way from Ocracoke, all the way up to Chesapeake and all points in between, Elizabeth City, and all that good stuff. Congressman Walter Jones. Congressman, Happy New Year. It's good to have you.
Well, John, Happy New Year to you, and I hope you will visit Ocracoke and occasionally. And I like the way you said it initially, but then you corrected yourself. So.
Ocracoke. You got to go there. We love going there, and I went for I went for a baseball tournament last Memorial Day, and it was one of the best times we've ever had. If anybody's never been there, you got to go on a ferry. It's like if you want a relaxing, great weekend, that's where like God goes on vacation. God goes to Ocracoke on vacation.
I love that.
That's where he goes. That's you can put that in your stuff for there, attract people there where God goes on vacation. Okay, so we're going to get to this DACA stuff, but you yesterday put a press release out. I got to share this with my audience, right? So Congressman Jones represents the 3rd District, North Carolina, puts out a press release, and he's calling on, I kid you not, right? This is what's going on your tax time. It's calling on the House Appropriations Committee to include language for all future appropriations to ensure that computer networks and federal agencies block the viewing, downloading, and exchanging of porn. As we have this epidemic across the federal agencies of government employees, instead of working, watching porn on their computers. I'm not kidding you. This is an epidemic. I mean, come on, Congressman. These guys are watching, and gals are downloading porn on the taxpayer dime. What is going on in there?
Well, I tell you, John, this is it's an issue, and I want to say I believe it's by a very few, but a very few can add up to many across this nation. It is a problem. I actually wrote the chairman 3 years ago and asked him to put language in the appropriations bill that would make the agencies more responsive to make sure that they were blocking this kind of activity by some of the employees. I got a call back in early December from a young lady who was doing a investigative story on this issue, and she had known that I had put the letter into the chairman a few years ago and asked that he try to block or stop this federal employees on the taxpayer's dime watching pornography. And again, he put the language in that. But the lady that's doing this article that's not been made public yet interviewed me, and I told her, I said, I want to thank you. I said, we get involved in so many issues up here that what I might have done 2 or 3 years ago, it's in the past. I don't even think about it. But because of you, meaning the reporter, I'm going to renew my efforts and write the chairman. It's a new chairman now, Rodney Friesenhauser from New Jersey. So I wrote him a letter 2 days ago asking him to do the same thing the previous chairman had done, and that's to. And I also wrote Mick Mulvaney, in the administration, trying to get him involved in this. I don't think we can totally stop it. I'm going to be honest about it. But for goodness sakes, with our country going financially broke, if we got employees that can't do their work without watching pornography, they ought to be fired.
I mean, this is incomprehensible to me that this wouldn't be in any appropriations bill. I mean, it's tough enough to get through a day and get your work done without downloading and surfing porn. Now, we know this has been a real big issue in the Internal Revenue Service, Congressman. That's well documented, all right? It's like pick up the phone, call somebody up, harass them for their taxes, download a little pornographic stuff, call somebody else, put a file away, watch another porn segment. I mean, this is what's going on in the Internal Revenue Service. This is mind-boggling that you would even have to do this, because you would think that everybody would say yes. I mean, there's just no way. All these would be blocked, just like we block it for our children. It's crazy.
Well, I think we all know that with technology the way it is today, it's very, very hard to police it. We've seen foreign governments hack into the American people. The world of technology has its pluses, but it also, John, in my opinion, has its minuses as well. And we're going to get back on this, and again, That started with writing the chairman, asking him to get the agencies to start looking back into what's going on as it relates to many of their employees. And certainly, again, we got so many good employees, federal employees in this country. It's a minor amount of employees, but that adds up to thousands. So we're talking about not just D.C., we're talking about across the country. So we need to do the best we can. We can't do, we'll never be totally successful, but we can certainly make the effort in behalf of the taxpayer.
Well, I don't really think there's any other choice but to do that, and I appreciate your even bringing it to attention. It's easy to slip these things under the carpet and go on to something else, and I appreciate the effort you're doing, Congressman, to hold people accountable. Yesterday, the president saying, hey, you know what, we ought to bring back earmarks, like so then we can have Alaska bridges to nowhere and all that stuff that went down, and we can bring back Murtha, remember him, Congressman Murtha?
Oh, yeah.
Dig him up, and we could put him up, exhume him like a weekend at Bernie's, and he can get all the money back for his district and build submarine plants in the middle of Pennsylvania or whatever he did. What was that about?
I don't know. I think many of my friends I've talked to since the meeting yesterday at the White House with the Republicans and Democrats, several of my friends, I think, were somewhat puzzled by many of the statements made by President Trump. But the one about bringing back earmarks, which I call pork barrel spending, the earmarks, if there's ever been, I know it happened to me a couple of times where I had an amendment that passed on the floor, and then I had the chairman to come over to me and tell me that if I didn't vote with them on another amendment, then they would pull the money for my district. So I joined my colleagues to say we do not need to have earmarks, because earmarks create a very dishonest system. This system is bad enough the way it is, but if you really want to make it disgusting, then reactivate earmarks. It would be the wrong thing.
Okay, let's get to the president's position yesterday on DACA, looking for a solution that would include 4 things on immigration reform and control that he outlined. Obviously, getting rid of chain migration, which has been a disaster, going to a more of a merit-based system, border security, which includes a wall, in order to do DACA. But last night, we got a judge in San Francisco that said, well, you can't overturn Obama's illegal executive order with another illegal executive order, meaning it's got to go back to Congress. They have to decide. How do you come down on this whole thing, Congressman?
Well, I just do not think it's as simple as saying we can have a clean DACA bill. You can have that as a concept, but the reality is, John, in the details. And maybe that was the president saying, well, let's get started. That's fine. But for goodness sakes, don't make it so simple that you can say we're going to have a clean DACA bill. There are too many questions that have to be answered before you can even get a bill on the floor. Now, I will say that I have not seen it yet, but Bob Goodlatte and 3 other Republicans announced yesterday, I think Goodlatte brought it up at the meeting with the president, that they're going to have a bill that they're going to put in tomorrow, I think, and there'll be a big press conference on it, I'm sure, or this afternoon, that they're going to drop a bill that deals with the DACA issue. Again, I've not seen it. It's probably on the website now by Goodlatte, but I've not seen it. I just didn't have time. But this is not going to be a simple, let's fix it, and that's it. It's just not going to happen.
Congressman Walter Jones with us, representing the 3rd District of North Carolina. That's the Outer Banks area from Ocracoke Island all the way up the coast to Chesapeake, Elizabeth City. That's the 3rd District of North Carolina. He's a Republican, and he's the quintessential maverick, if you will. That's why we love having him on. Plus, he was a star basketball player. They called him the Golden Arm, and he hit all these shots back when there were no threes. Had there been a 3-ball then, it would have been record-setting, lights out, no question, the Golden Arm. for those of you that don't know him. Great basketball perimeter player. Congressman, so would you be willing to back a deal on DACA, letting these children, that many of them are now adults, that came to the United States illegally by their parents, even though not their fault, no consequence now to the parents, could you back a compromise that said, all right, we're going to let them stay, give them work opportunities, and in return for that, we're going to have real immigration reform that includes stopping the flow of illegals, stopping the flow of cheap labor, stopping the nonsense that's going on, stopping chain migration, stopping scam visas, stopping all the stuff that goes on to drive wages down, and also creates an opportunity for Democrats to grow their voting base. Are you open to some kind of a compromise?
As the question is today, the answer would be no. I have for too long seen too many things up here talked about, but then when they put it into a bill, meaning written form, and you look at it, is usually something in that bill that would make a situation worse. And I'm not just talking about the issue of DACA. I'm talking about immigration reform. I mean, to me, John, if you don't have it in your hands to read, you don't know what's in there. And half the time when you have it in your hands to read, there's an unintended consequences of what you're reading. It's just too complex and too difficult to say with a yes or no. I'm sorry about these young people that came here without making the decision for themselves, but still we have to enforce the laws of this country. If you change the laws of this country, you better be sure that you know what you're doing when you change it.
So basically anything that involves keeping the DACA people in the United States, any path to citizenship, you are not in favor of, because you're taking the position that their parents broke the law when they took them into the United States. Is that my understanding?
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. I'm going to always be willing to review a situation, in this case, talking about DACA. But again, I just don't think we can go where the Democrats want to go, where Mr. Trump apparently wants to go. It's just, to me, you're just opening the door, and you have no way to lock the door. And but I am willing to be open-minded. But if I had to vote today, I would vote no.
In a situation where you would vote no, so what do you think should happen with those that are in the DACA program that, applied for the extensions or whatever? Do you think they should be, asked to leave? Or would you be in favor of a long-term temporary status, if you will, where they can work and function but can't be a citizen, can't vote? Or should they just have to leave?
Well, I think you can create a system. There's no way you can send people back. I mean, I'm the first to say I don't think that's realistic.
Right.
But the point I'm trying to say is that there's got to be a system that you're proposing, which I think yes to that question. But there's got to be some type of penalty, even though you were a child when you came to this country, to stay here. Mm-hmm. I don't know what that needs to be. I'm looking forward. This is going to be this is going to probably not be resolved, in my opinion. I'm just about DACA until about April or May. There will be outside groups. There will be individuals for and against a program, and that's where I think most members of Congress, even though many of us think that we continue to give more than we receive, and I'm just talking about the law. It's going to be a very interesting period of time, but again, too many. When we start changing the laws for this group or that group, I'm not talking specifically about DACA, then our country becomes weaker and weaker.
All right, it's going to be
and we're headed for collapse with the debt anyway.
That's going to be the final word from Congressman, North Carolina 3rd District, Walter Jones, Republican. Thanks for being with us, sir. Always appreciate your breath of fresh air candor on every topic. And I mean, just think, but right now, let's see, somebody in your federal government, rather than doing that work, is right now watching a pornographic video on your dime. It just started right now. Let's wipe that. Let's just start there, right? And get rid of that. No porn for you. Thank you, Congressman, for bringing this important issue to everybody's attention. As always, it's always great to have you on.